Well, I can't think of anything more vintage than sourdough. Hey y'all, it's April. Thanks for stopping by my crazy creative life. And this is the vintage series. Well, I really can't think of anything that's more vintage than sourdough bread. If you don't know what sourdough bread is, it is where you take... What I'm fixing to explain is the sourdough starter. You have to use the sourdough starter to make sourdough bread. Sorry I didn't explain that too well in the video. Is where you take flour and water and it sours, hence the name sourdough, but it sours and it collects yeast from the air, and that's how what they would use to make their bread rise. Because back then they didn't have the little yeast packets like what we've got today that makes it easy to make rolls or any kind of yeast type bread. So they had to rely on their sourdough. And there's also stories of generations where they've just handed down the sourdough from generation to generation. But in today's video, I am going to make what's called a sourdough starter. And basically you are doing equal parts of flour, and I'm using whole wheat organic unbleached flour because it's best, if you can, to use unbleached flour, because the bleach can the chemicals in that can kind of affect how your sourdough does. And it's also best to use either filtered water, or you can buy like the spring water, but you want something that doesn't have all of the chemicals in the water as well, like the chlorine and stuff that comes out of tap water that can also affect your sourdough and how it sours and turns, basically into yeast. But I will start off, and you will see I'm going to take 60 grams. And it's better to weigh it if you can. You want equal parts of water, equal parts of flour. And just remember that water weighs more than the flour. So if you don't have a scale, you can do 1/3 cup of flour to about 1/4 cup of water. But if you have a scale, which it's preferred that you have a scale, then you're going to do about 60 grams of water to 60 grams of flour. And we'll mix that together. And you don't want to use any kind of aluminum, so you don't want to use just a regular spoon or fork to mix it up. You want to use either plastic, silicone, wood, something like that to stir it up. I'm just going to cover it with the paper towel, because I've got it in a canning jar and a mason jar. I'm going to cover it with the paper towel, that way it can kind of absorb some of the yeast that's in, the natural yeast that's in our air. That was a tongue twister. So that way it can kind of absorb. So the first day we make it, the second day we do nothing. Then the third day, and I'll come back and I'll show you this in a subsequent video, but the third day we're going to remove half of it, which is called the discard. We remove half of the starter. Okay, so this starter should double in size. So on day one, we've got our 60 grams. It's 60 grams of water, 60 grams of flour. We mix that. Day two, we do nothing. We just let it sit there and let it, kind of start to sour and soak in the yeast that's from the air, the atmosphere. So day two, we do nothing. Day three, it should have doubled in size. So you're going to take out half. So that would roughly be about 60 grams because it should have doubled up to 180. So you're going to take out 60 grams. Then after you take out your 60 grams, then you're going to replenish that 60 grams. You're going to put new flour, so 60 grams of flour again, 60 grams of water. But if you don't have a scale, then you can kind of roughly do 1/3 cup of flour to 1/4 cup of the water. So that would bring it back up to 180 grams. The next day you're going to do the same thing, and it should start to double in size. So each day you're going to take out half, and whatever you take out, like that, for instance, the 60, ever how many grams you take out, you're going to replenish that with the same amount of water and flour. And you start out, it's best to start out with the organic flour, but after that you can use just all-purpose flour. The unbleached is preferable, like I said earlier, and you can use that. It's a little cheaper than the organic flour. You can also use bread flour, but what we're doing, it's called feeding our dough. You take out half of what's in there, and then you just replace it with the fresh, and that's kind of feeding your sourdough. And roughly by day 7 you should have your actual sourdough. By that point you can start using your sourdough for bread to rise bread or whatever. a way to know that if your sourdough is soured and it's ready to use for bread, you will, on the day of, like for instance day 7, you're going to take out half of your sourdough, you're going to feed it like the previous 6 days. Once you feed it, then you're going to wait at least a couple hours to kind of give it time to become active and start to double in size again. And so once it does that, then you're going to take just a little piece of the sourdough of the starter and you're going to drop it in a glass of water. If it floats to the top, then you know it's ready to use for your bread, and if not, then wait another day and see what happens. The discard, you may be wondering, well, what do I do with the discard? Isn't that very wasteful? There's a lot of recipes out there that you can use your discard. I have in the past, I've used the discard to make sourdough pancakes. Sourdough pancakes are really good. I've also used it to make sourdough crackers, and they're really good too. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do with the discard. That way you're not actually wasting, because it does seem like it's a lot of flour to throw away. So there are things that you can do, and we'll probably go over some of these recipes. So anyway, let's go ahead. If you already know about sourdough, this has probably been boring to you, but if you don't know about sourdough, you might find interest in everything that I've said. I know I've talked a lot, but if you have any questions, then leave them down in the comment section below and I'll do my best to answer. And I guess now let's go ahead and jump in, and you will see me starting the sourdough. And make sure that you start out in a clean jar. There is the flour I'm using. It's the Arrowhead Mills Organic All-Purpose Unbleached Flour. And like I told you earlier, it's important that it's unbleached. And there's just some distilled drinking water, the pre-bottled, or you can use the spring water. There's my scale. Okay, here we go. I've got my scale out. I've got my clean mason jar. It's the pint size, but it's the wide mouth. I like that a lot better, the wide mouth, when I'm doing the sourdough. But I have it sitting on my scale, so I'm just trying to get 60 grams. Oops, I went a little bit over. And there's the 60. And I forgot to zero it out, so I just went to 120 whenever I started pouring my water. I realized there what I'd done, but I thought, well, it's too late now. I'll just look at it and make sure I stop at 120. And there we go. We're at 120 grams. And then I'm just using my small spatula and stirring it up. And it is going to be kind of thick. And honestly, the whole wheat flour soaks up a little bit more moisture than your all-purpose flour. So if you feel like you need to put just a little bit more water in it to thin it down just a little bit more, that is okay. Right now I'm just putting paper towel over it so that way dust and debris, or not that I have debris in my house, but you know what I'm saying. But anyway, dust or anything won't fall in it. And then I just took the mason jar lid and just screwed on top, and it's holding that paper towel down. And you want to store this someplace warm, so I'm putting it beside my stove. Okay, so that's all. That's the end of the video. So I hope you liked it. If you do, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that little subscribe button. Turn on the notification bell. That way you know when I'm uploading new videos. And I plan on doing more with this sourdough. I plan on doing more vintage recipes. And who knows, and I hope to get some crafts out there soon. So anyway, I hope that you've had a blessed day. I hope you're in and you're warm. I know we've got quite a bit of snow out there right now, or at least where I'm at on this particular day. So hopefully you are warm and safe, and I hope you have a blessed rest of your day, and I will talk to you in the next one. Bye. Hey, if you like this video, you may want to check out my previous video or my previous series. Talk to you soon.